Welcome back to our channel. Today is story time. I am going to share one of my childhood stories of me realizing that my mom was gone. My mom died when I was 13 years old. She died cancer related. She had tumors in her head. But prior to her having that cancer, she actually had cancer 2 times before then. The first time she had cancer was breast cancer. She had that removed and she pretty much did um, chemotherapy, chemotherapy, and I believe radiation. I'm not 100% sure. Remember, I was a kid at the time. She went through that whole ordeal and she made it out fine, no problem. Well, 2 years later, she got cancer again. And this time, the tumors were on her back. Instead of having them surgically removed, she just went to radiation. And she could have done chemo too, but I'm not sure. But at that time, when she went into the hospital, when she had the tumor on her back, my mom was in the hospital for like 2 months. So when she was in the hospital, they didn't allow us to come, they wouldn't let us come visit her. So for those 2 months, we just didn't see her. We talked to her maybe twice a week on the phone, maybe, but we just didn't see her. So when she came back home, in a wheelchair. And um, it was tough because when she returned home, well, prior to her going back to the hospital with the tumor on her back, she had got real sick. And when she was sick, by me being the only girl, because I had brothers, I had 3 brothers, I had to do everything in the house. I washed dishes, I cleaned clothes, I cooked dinner, and I also had to help her. I helped her bathe. I was hoping I can get through the story without crying, so just give me a minute. And I pretty much slept in her. I had my own room, but at that point, I slept in a room with her because she couldn't get out of her bed and she would be in a lot of pain. So I would have to make sure in the middle of the night that I was there to give her medicine. I had to change her bedpan. And when she came back from the hospital, she was still sick. She was worse off than when she went in. But this time she came back in. She came back in a wheelchair. So, I still had to go to school. And when I got home from school, I made sure I cleaned up whatever needed to be cleaned. I washed whatever clothes needed to be washed. I cooked my brother's dinner. We had family members that came over from time to time and helped out, like with bringing dinner, or they'll come over and help cook dinner. But that always is always in the beginning. That it seemed like every time she got sick, yeah, we had family around in the beginning. But over time, people had their own lives and things that they had to do. So I felt like the pressure, felt upon, me to help her out. And as time went on, she went to therapy to learn how to walk again. But until she did, I still had to, change her, help her use the restroom, um, do her bedpan and stuff like that. And then I guess my mom realized that it was a lot on me. So she would tell me to just leave crackers and a cup of water on the side of the bed so she wouldn't have to wake me up because she knew I had school. So she would just leave the medicine on the side of the bed and just a cracker or something so she can eat and drink and she wouldn't have to wake me up when she was in pain, which was fine. That went on for maybe a couple of months. And then she got to the point where she wasn't in pain. She was only sick for the first 3 days after radiation. Every time she did radiation, the first 3 days she was sick. And we couldn't even cook in the house when she came back from radiation or chemo. We used to have to eat somebody would bring us something and we'd have to eat our dinner outside on the porch. Or we had to have like sandwiches, anything that didn't have smell. Because other than that, it would make her vomit for the first couple of days after chemo and all of that. She was sick and she would vomit. And then she'll feel better for a few days and then she had to go back to chemo. But eventually she got better. She eventually learned how to walk. It took her a while, but she had to go to therapy, physical therapy for that. So she learned how to walk again. So then she was fine for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. She was fine. She got better. She was our Sunday school teacher, the YPWW teacher, and everything was going good. And then she started having bad headaches. She didn't think nothing of it. If she did, she didn't tell us. I was a child then, so it wasn't like she would be, hey, I'm anything like that. I just remember the last time she went into the hospital, she was upset with my brother because he didn't mop the kitchen floor. I think it was he either didn't mop the kitchen floor or he didn't do the dishes. It was something like that. And she had got so upset and she was yelling at him for it, not doing his chore. She went upstairs and she ran her some bath water. And she had me come in because she said, I can't get out the tub. And as she was sitting there, you could tell like she was getting like funnier looking. And she was just like, call 911. And time the ambulance people came to help get her out the shower, but she wanted to go to the hospital. And at that point, when my brother came in the bathroom, the child she just got finished yelling at earlier that day, less than an hour ago, she couldn't remember him. And she was completely disoriented, if I said that correctly. So she went on and went to the hospital. I called my oldest brother because he didn't live with us. He was 11 years older than me. He was in his 20s. So I called him and let him know, hey, mommy went to the hospital. He said, okay, I'll go up there and see how things going. He went up there. Eventually got late that night. He had his girlfriend, who was his daughter's mom, come stay with us that night because they was admitting my mom and she wasn't coming back home. At least not that day, we thought. So for the next 2 days she was in the hospital, I was able to stay at home with my brothers. As time went on, after those 2 days, I had to pack my stuff. And they sent me to go stay with my cousin. That never happened before, all the time she'd been in the hospital. So I thought it was strange that I had to go stay somewhere else. Because normally I just stay home with my brothers. My brother will move in or, he'll stay with us every night. Him and his girlfriend, or sometimes it'd be just his girlfriend. But this time was different. I was there at my cousin's house for a week and a half. And one day, I came back from school. And my cousin mom told me, your mom wants you to come up to the hospital and have dinner with her. I was happy because then I'm thinking all my fears, because I thought something was really wrong, but we went a long time without seeing her last time. So I just figured, she's going to get better. She'll come back home. So when she told me, oh, your mom wants you to come to the hospital, I was like, okay, she must be getting ready to come home soon and I'll be able to go back home. So when I went up there, I brought my cousin with me, my cousin that was my age. And my mom was like a little upset because she really wanted just her kids there. She just wanted the three young ones, which was me and my one of my brothers that's a few years older than me and my youngest brother. She only wanted us there. And she told us the nurse was going to take us downstairs and we could pick anything we want to have for dinner that night in the cafeteria. And then we was going to bring it back upstairs and we ate dinner with her. My mom talked to us, asked us how our day went. She told us that she loved us. And I had told her I wanted to go home. I said, I don't understand why I have to stay elsewhere. I want to be home with my brothers. And she told me, oh, my sister think it's best that you be over there and be around, your girl cousin. And I said, no, I want to go home and be with my brothers. And my mom told me, no problem, you'll go home tonight. So I had got happy. And then she gave us our bus tickets, which I'm assuming my brother brought up to the hospital for her to give to us. So to give to me because I guess he knew I was going to have to come up there. So instead of him having to bring it to where I was, he brought my little bus tickets because that's how I got back and forth to school on public bus because my cousin didn't live near my school. And well, we didn't live near our school either, but I picked up she gave me the bus tickets. She gave us all kisses goodbye. And she said, I never really tripped off of it, but she said, there's no need to come up here tomorrow. That it didn't fit in the conversation, but she just said, you don't need to come up here tomorrow. It's not like we came up there. So I was just like, okay. We all gave her a hug and a kiss. My brother's girlfriend was there. I don't remember my oldest brother being there at all. And I believe I remember his girlfriend taking me, dropping my cousin off and allowing me to go in and pick up all my stuff and her taking me back home. I had my own room at my house, so I didn't understand why I needed to be elsewhere. So, moving right along, that next day, I didn't go to school. I didn't feel good, and I told my brother, my oldest brother who was taking care of us, my oldest brother, James, I told him I didn't feel good. And he said, no problem. He said, you don't have to go to school. And he said, come up here. Because I was laying in my bed. And he was like, no, go get in mommy bed and just stay up there. Because my mom didn't allow TVs in our room. We had a TV in the living room and a TV in her room. So he told me to come lay upstairs in her room because he had to go to work. And I said, okay. So I went upstairs and I was up there. The hospital called the first time and they asked for my brother. And I was like, oh, he's not here, but I can beep him. Back then, beepers was, the thing back then. So I said, I can beep him. And she was like, oh, okay. So I beat my brother. He didn't call back. Normally, if we beep him and he knows to call back because he knows, it's our house number. He knows it's one of us. And he knew by the time, it was in the morning time, so he had to know it had something to do with me. because I was home alone. But he didn't return the phone call. An hour later, the hospital calls again. And it was like, hey, can we speak to my brother? I was like, he's not here, but I can beep him. And the lady was like, well, just give me his beeper number because we really need to speak to him. So I said, okay. So I gave him my brother's beeper number. And then I beeped him again. He still didn't respond. A couple hours later, the hospital called again. And when she asked for him, I said, no, he's not here. I gave you guys his beeper number. He should have called you guys back. And she said, may I ask who am I speaking to? And I said, oh, you're speaking to his sister. And she was like, who is, Barbara Miller? That's my mom name. To you. And I was like, that's my mom. And she was like, okay, well, we need to, and she's like, she was getting ready to say something, and then she stopped, and she was like, how old are you? And I said, I'm 13. And she was like, oh no, we need to speak to someone over 18, so we'll need to speak to your brother. And at that time, that's when I got nervous, because then I said, like, what's going on? Because you guys keep calling. And she was like, oh no, just have your brother call us at the hospital. I said, okay. So my brother, I texted him again. I'm not text, but I beeped him again. He didn't call us back. By then, my other brothers had got home from school, and we were sitting in the house. And later that evening around dinner time, because he called and he said, hey, y'all get ready. And I said, okay. So I figured he was either getting ready to bring us dinner or take us to get dinner. I didn't really think nothing of it. When he came and got us, he said, hey, we got to go to the hospital. I said, okay. We went up to the hospital and we had a meeting. It was a meeting. He had called all her brothers and sisters. And they had a meeting with the doctor. You know how the doctor tell you, like, what? This is what's going on. This is what can be done. This is what can't be done. And the doctor basically said she has tumors in her brain. They can remove one tumor. But if they remove the tumor, she could be left in a vegetary state, or she won't survive. Like, her chance of survival was very low. And they said they wanted to give it time and speak to someone else, see if something else could be done. So before we left the hospital, my oldest brother wanted to make sure that we went and seen her, but she was in the ICU. Okay. I can't remember who walked in with me or if I walked in by myself, because we all couldn't go in together. So they had to take us. I think they took us one child at a time with an adult. I'm not sure. I can't, I blocked it out of my mind so much that I can't remember. This happened over 20 something years ago. I don't understand why I can't get through the story. I just remember walking in that IC room, and she was laying in the bed. She had all the machines on her. I never made it in her room, because if you ever been in an ICU, the rooms are spread like this in a circle with the nurse that's in the middle, and there's all glass, so they're able to see straight into the room. So I remember walking through the door, and I basically met up with the nurse desk, and her room was right there, and I couldn't go in. And it might have been somebody there with me, because I remember somebody nudging my back, trying to force me to go in. And I just remember her stomach was going up, down. It wasn't like a regular breathing. It was just like up, down. And it was going whatever machine was going. That's what I can remember. And I couldn't go in. I couldn't go in. One thing I didn't mention is I was my mom's only daughter, and me and her was so close. She was like my best friend. I spent the majority of my time with her. I just, man, I just felt like she was the only person in this world that truly loved me. She truly loved me. It wasn't something that I had that she liked. No, she truly, truly loved me. And I never felt unloved. I never. I always felt truly, truly loved. I knew if nobody else cared about me, she cared about me. Well, that night, we left the hospital and we went back home. Um, she was in ICU for a while, for a few days. Um, a couple of days later, I was with my brother's girlfriend, and she went to take my niece up there to see her. My niece had went up there, and I went with her. I didn't know she was going to the hospital because we spent the day doing other things, and then she went up to the hospital. She went in, and I tried to go in. Um, they allowed my niece to go in, and she was. I never. I think I stepped in the room doorway at that time, and she was touching her. Like she was just talking to my mom like she was there. All I saw was a shell. But she was like, "Oh, Barbara, I got your baby up here." Because she loved my niece. She considered my niece as her second daughter. I wouldn't even call my niece my niece. I would call her my sister. That's how much time we spent with her. So she was just talking and I couldn't take it. So I left out and I went in the bathroom and just broke down and cried. And I guess she must have came looking for me because she came in the bathroom and wanted to make sure I was okay. Either she did or the nurse did. I can't remember the face of the person. But I eventually just waited in the waiting room until she was ready to go. And so from there, I went home. Maybe she spent another few more days in the ICU. I just remember my brother having a family meeting at home where it was just me and my brothers, just the four of us. And he said basically that there was nothing that they can do for her. We can let her have the surgery. If she do survive, she'll be a vegetable. If she don't, she will die. Or we could just take her off of life support. Can you imagine what went on in our minds? You got to remember at the time, I was only 13. My youngest brother was 2 years younger than me, so that means he was 11. And my brother that was 3 years older than me was only 16. You're giving a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old to vote. Because my brother said he didn't want to be selfish and make the decision by himself. That he preferred for us to vote. And so we voted. The only person that voted to keep her life support, to have the surgery, was my youngest brother. Even at 13, I knew that I'd rather for her to be gone than to be here in pain. And maybe she wouldn't have been if they did the surgery and she was a vegetable, but who wants to live like that? That's not no life. Laying in the bed for the rest of your life. Who's going to take care of her? I told myself I couldn't be selfish like that. Even though I would have rather had her here, at least I could visit her and kiss her and hug her. But I couldn't be selfish like that. Oh. One thing I vowed to do is never have to put my kids through that. I will have it on my medical files what will be done if nothing else can be done. So they won't have to make a decision like that. But the next day, the family met up at the hospital. I didn't go. I chose not to be there. You know, my brother let her brothers and sisters know the decision that was made so they can go say their goodbyes. She was in ICU. I only know this part because one of the church ladies told me this. A couple of the church people, our pastor wife, and one of the other ladies from our church went. And she told me this part at my mom's funeral. She said, even though she wasn't there, when they sung her favorite song and prayed, you saw her hand move. And she told me that my mom was at peace. I look back on it now, and I can see that my mama knew she was going to die. That's why she had us come up there and had that final meal with her. So we had that last moment with her. I truly believe God let her know that she was getting ready to come home. And I also found out later on as I got older, because my brother who took care of us, because he ended up finished raising us, we would have talks and he would open up more about it. And he said that same night that we had dinner with my mom, he went up to the hospital to be with her for a while. And he said my mom made him promise to finish raising us, not to let nobody take us, not to split us up. She wanted her children to be raised together, and my brother vowed to do that. So I believe God let my mom know that, hey, I'm calling you home. Your time here, your work here is done. The only suck part is when they took her off of life support, it was actually my brother's birthday. So my brother that was 16, he wasn't 16 yet. He had turned 16 the day she died. I wish they would have put a little bit more thought into that, because his birthday is difficult for him, as it should be. It's the day you were born, but it's also the day that your mom passed away. But I don't think they purposely did. I just think my oldest brother was dealing with a lot. He was dealing with the fact that he was losing his mom, and now he had to be responsible for three younger people, and he was only 23, 24. And he also already had a child of his own. So I know that had to be like a lot on his mind and a burden on his mind. I just remember like a week or so later, my mom friend took us shopping to get funeral clothes. I remember the funeral. It was at our church. I didn't sit with my brothers and them because I really didn't want to go to the funeral, but my brother made me. He said, I can't remember what he said. He said something about, I don't know. He just made me go. I just know I didn't want to go, but he said I had to go. And so I went. I didn't have a choice. Because if I had a choice, I would have stayed home. So we went to the funeral. I didn't sit with my brothers and them. They sat on the front row. You know how they make the family sit on the front row. I didn't sit on the front row. I think I sat in the second or the third row. But I sat with my cousin, Denisha. She tried her hardest. She tried her hardest to not have me cry. So every time somebody got up and said something, either they said something, sung something, she would either make fun of, Mom, just one moment. Sorry about that. My son came in the room. She made me laugh. She would try to make me laugh. She'll crack a joke. She did that throughout the whole funeral. Then it came time to view the body. Now, through the whole funeral, I had my eyes closed the whole time because her casket was open the whole time. So when it was time to view the body, I held my cousin's hand. And I walked with her, but I closed my eyes. My eyes was closed the whole time. Or every once in a while, I might turn my head and look out the window or something like that. But the way the church was set up, I just spent, the way they had her body, I spent the majority of my time with my eyes closed. And the reason why I did that, because I always told myself, I never wanted that to be my final image of her. I don't know if anybody ever had this issue, but it's like whenever if you see someone, the last time you see that person is the first thought that comes to your mind. And I didn't want that to ever be my thought. I never want to remember her in a casket. I never. Now, throughout this time, I wasn't crying much. I really didn't deal with it mentally, because to me, in my mind at that time, I just felt like she's in the hospital. She's going to, come home. So even after going to the funeral, and weeks going by, my brother he put me in a grieving group in my school, because my high school had that. He talked to the counselor there, so they put me in a grieving group because he felt like I wasn't coping well with it. I remember going to the groups and everything else, but it didn't feel real to me. Like, her death didn't feel real to me. Like, it just didn't feel real. So I can understand how when people say, well, how a person doing this, because it didn't feel real to me. Like, I've been months without seeing her. She's been in the hospital before, where we went 2 months without seeing her. So to not go a few weeks with not seeing her, going a few weeks of not seeing her was nothing to me. So it didn't really register in my mind that she was gone until one night. And it's had to be about maybe 3 months or so after she passed away. I had a dream. I just know she was in a dream. I'm not going to tell the whole dream because some of it is private. But she was there in the dream. Dream started off as a nightmare. She appeared and she talked to me. And she was letting me know that she's gone. And I just remember her words, "I'm not coming back." I woke up out of that dream. I'll never forget it. It was in the middle of the night. I think that's when it hit me. Hey, she's not coming back. I cried and I screamed. And I remember being held. And I just remember kept saying over and over, "She's not coming back for me." And I think at that moment is when I finally realized, like, she's not coming back for me. From that day forward, I struggled a lot with my relationship with God. I used to get so upset if anybody mentioned God. And I could stand the fact when grown folks would tell me, "Oh, God got a reason for everything." Could you imagine telling a child that God got a reason for everything? And even after my mom died, my brother made us go to church still. He knew that was my mama's wishes. So he get us up every Sunday. We'll go to our church. Even when I didn't want to believe no more, I still had to get up every Sunday and go to church. The church people were nice. But I got so tired of hearing God has his reason for everything. Because telling somebody, especially a child, that God has his reason for everything. And all I kept thinking is, what was his reason? What was his reason for taking the only person in this world that loved me away from me? Don't get me wrong, I know my oldest brother loved us. And I know I had other family members. But that love, pure love, I knew she loved me. Oh, I was so frustrated. I hated going to church. I took my time. I was always late. I just couldn't get over it. I just couldn't get over it. Like, what would be your reason? How was taking my mom away from me at 13 your plan? And you might be wondering where our dad was. My dad died when we were 10. So my dad was already taken away from us. So to have my last parent taken away, I don't know. I just was hurt. And I went years of being upset. Years of being upset. And I used to often look back and be like, what if she would have lived? How would my life have turned out? Would I have made all the decisions that I made? No. Would I have done different in my life? Probably so. Because I spent so many years upset. I don't know. One thing I just vowed to do is try to be as a great mom as she was to me and my brothers. Well, that's my story. Coming to realization that my mom was gone. To listen to my story. Thank you for listening to my story.